We're ever going to get back to the old America. That's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas, and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it. That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5. Isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say math is racist, queers for Palestine, looting is cool, healthy at any weight. If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie.
The Democratic Party has been facing a series of setbacks, and Bill Maher believes he understands the reason. During a recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, he spoke bluntly about why he thinks the party is losing support in different parts of the country. Maher argued that these losses are not random. In his view, they reflect deeper problems in strategy, messaging, and how the party connects with everyday voters. With the midterm elections approaching and 2028 already part of the national conversation, Maher warned that the Democratic National Committee could face even more challenges if it does not make serious changes. He believes that repeating the same talking points and relying on the same approach may only push more voters away. According to him, the political landscape is shifting, and failing to adapt could come at a high cost. Whether one agrees with his assessment or not, Maher's comments have added to a growing debate about the party's direction and future. If you're interested in understanding where this conversation is headed, stay tuned as we break it all down.
I don't think most liberals are insane, but neither do they make it clear they disapprove of the ones who are, and their cowardice in not marginalizing their own crazies has been their downfall. I couldn't get Neil deGrasse Tyson, a genius scientist and preeminent scientific voice in the media, to agree that it was ridiculous for Scientific American and The Atlantic to be claiming that separating sports by sex doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. Actually, it makes perfect sense. And it's obvious that it does.
Bill Maher recently argued that most liberals are not extreme, but he believes they often fail to clearly distance themselves from the most controversial voices within their own movement. In his view, that reluctance has hurt the Democratic Party politically. He suggested that when party leaders or supporters avoid calling out ideas they privately disagree with, it creates the impression that those views represent the mainstream. Maher pointed to a debate involving sports and biological sex, criticizing articles published in Scientific American and The Atlantic that question traditional sex-based divisions in athletics. He said he even struggled to get Neil deGrasse Tyson to openly state that separating sports by sex makes practical sense. For Maher, this issue is not just about policy. He sees it as an example of what happens when political arguments drift away from what many voters view as basic science and common sense. His broader concern is about strategy. Maher argues that when a political party appears to support ideas that seem disconnected from everyday reasoning, it risks losing moderate voters. He believes that when respected public figures appear to blur the line between science and ideology, it creates confusion rather than clarity. In the end, Maher's message is straightforward. If a party focuses too heavily on cultural debates instead of everyday economic and practical concerns, it should not be surprised when support weakens and election results reflect that shift.
And there's a lot of stuff like that on the left. And when conservatives see it, they say, I'm sorry, we're just not going to go along with reinventing society, often pointlessly, even if we have to cancel democracy to do it. That's what they're saying. They see gender as only a construct and sex is assigned at birth, and they say, we're not doing that. Transing kids by self-diagnosis with no age limit, no parental notification, and no acknowledgement of social contagion, not doing it. Asylum now covers any reason for anyone to come to America, not doing it.
Bill Maher takes his argument a step further by identifying what he believes are the specific ideas hurting the Democratic Party's broader appeal. He says many voters feel uncomfortable with positions that seem to challenge long-standing scientific or historical understandings. In his view, when political messaging focuses on redefining complex issues like gender or social identity in ways that feel sudden or unclear, it creates uncertainty instead of agreement. Maher also points to the heated debates surrounding youth gender issues, especially questions about parental involvement, consent, and medical decisions. He notes that these discussions are no longer limited to small activist circles. They have entered mainstream political debate, and now influence how many Americans see the party as a whole. For him, these topics have become major cultural flashpoints. His broader concern is about political strategy. Maher argues that when Democrats place heavy emphasis on divisive cultural issues, they risk pushing away moderate voters who might otherwise support them on economic or governance matters. In his view, that shift in focus can weaken the party's overall momentum and make it harder to build the broad coalition needed to win national elections.
Natural immunity doesn't count anymore. Whiteness is toxic. Penises in women's prisons. Welcoming the intifada. We're not doing it. And so, folks, if we are ever going to get back to the old America, that's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas, and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it.
Bill Maher ultimately urges Democrats to rethink their strategy by moving away from rigid ideological framing and welcoming real debate again. He argues that political strength does not come from demanding total agreement. Instead, it comes from allowing ideas to be openly questioned, challenged, and defended. In his view, healthy debate shows confidence, not weakness. Maher believes many voters now feel the party has become less tolerant of dissent when certain opinions are quickly dismissed or labeled. He says it creates the impression that only approved viewpoints are allowed. That kind of environment can energize a loyal base, but it may also push away independents and undecided voters who value open discussion and balance. For Maher, rebuilding trust requires a different tone. He argues that Democrats need to show they are willing to engage critics directly rather than avoid uncomfortable conversations. The path forward, he suggests, is built on transparency, honest disagreement, and the confidence to defend ideas in the open. Without that openness, he warns, momentum will remain difficult to regain.
Don't see it right away and go along. You're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh. 2 + 2 = 5. Isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say math is racist, queers for Palestine, looting is cool, healthy at any weight. If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie. You can't just say shit. And
Bill Maher says the tone coming from parts of the political left has grown so intense that even longtime liberals are starting to push back. What concerns him most is the feeling that some viewpoints are no longer offered as ideas open for discussion, but as conclusions that must be accepted without question. In his view, when disagreement is treated as a moral flaw instead of a normal part of debate, it weakens the foundation of open democracy. Maher argues that this climate can make people hesitant to speak honestly. Critics say there is growing fear of being publicly criticized or labeled simply for expressing a different opinion. Rather than inviting thoughtful exchange, the atmosphere can feel like pressure to fall in line. For Maher, that approach does not build strong support. He believes lasting political success comes from persuasion, not from forcing agreement. His larger warning is about inclusion. When public debate narrows and only one perspective seems acceptable, many voters may begin to feel pushed aside instead of represented. And when people feel excluded, that frustration often shows up at the ballot box.